Daniel, thank you so much for doing this. As I said in the announcement that kind of kicked this off, um, I am most interested in, well, there's a number of things that interest me about your presentation. I'm so thrilled for you. I remember, as I said, knowing of you before I met you for real, because we'd pass each other freezing cold as you were pedaling out on the Oberton Trail and I was coming into campus. I'm so excited for your future, and I know things are still, perhaps as I tell students all the time in the listserv, there's still a lot of movement that's yet to happen in
Yeah.
this application cycle. So, but I've got a bunch of questions, and we got a couple of folks here. Hopefully, they have questions. This
Yeah.
really is about the students. So I'm going to get out of the way and let you drive your slides. So
Yeah.
please go for it.
So my name's Daniel Haddad. I'm not as charismatic as Dave, so if I stumble through my words, you guys can unmute and laugh at me if you want, whatever. But we'll get through this together. So I'm going to be telling you about my application. I applied this cycle in 2025, and I also applied last cycle 2024. Okay, so just a little bit more about me is I'm a Syrian American. I was born and raised in Southern California. I actually didn't plan to go to UCSB initially. I was kind of between San Diego and UC Irvine. And then one of my friends convinced me to come to Santa Barbara because he said it would be fun. And I like fun, so I decided to come to Santa Barbara. I'm a cat owner. This is my little cat. She's not so little anymore, but so I'm the first person in my family to pursue medicine. I took the MCAT and applied all within a 4 month window because I did not know that the whole application process was a year and a half long. So I took my MCAT in June of 2024, and May 2024, and I submitted my primary application the next month. And I felt a strong determination to not take a gap year. I've just always felt like since I started college, I felt like I wanted to be a doctor and I didn't want to delay that any further than I had to. So I applied right away. I was really determined. A lot of my family suggested, hey, if you need more time, take it. But nobody really knew anything about the cycle or the process. So I was like, no, it's okay. I'll just go forward.
Okay, so
So,
I want to interrupt you because I want to make sure we got our timelines square for me,
yeah.
for my purposes, right?
Yep.
You took the MCAT the first time. You're a class of 24, right?
Yeah. I'm class of 24.
Class of 24. You graduated last June,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, so I took it, sorry, May 2023.
May 23, right?
Yeah.
You took it May 23 and applied as a
Yeah.
rising senior, basically at the end of
Yeah.
your junior year.
Yeah. So
Gotcha.
I
Okay.
studied for the MCAT and I did all that stuff while in school during winter and spring quarter. So I didn't have the most time to study, but we got through it. So, okay. Oops. So some prefaces. I just want to say there's no golden ticket to medical school. There's nothing that I can say that will guarantee that you get a full ride or that you get accepted to any particular medical school that you want to get into. This is a very holistic process. There's a lot of factors at play. I'm going to say something's important. I'm going to say another thing's important. I'm going to say this is super important. And honestly, it's all very important. It all factors in together to make your application. They're going to be looking at a lot of things. So don't get sick and tired if I keep saying this is important and that's important. It's because it truly is all important. And third, in my opinion and my observations. And I feel like I'm a good person to ask because I've gotten zero interviews and so this cycle, I ended up getting 5 interviews from MD schools and 3 interviews from the 3 DO schools that I also applied to. Okay. So here's the application timeline for those of you that might not be too familiar. So in January through April, you kind of prepare yourself. You get your MCAT score, hopefully sometime in that time. you know what schools you want to apply to, and you prepare your personal statements and your activities. Then in May and June, you submit your application. June, basically from June all the way till November, you'll be receiving secondaries, which are basically schools asking for more information about you that's more tailored to what they're looking for. And then after you finish that, they'll either invite you or not invite you to an interview. And then you get either accepted, denied, and then you visit the school and then decide if you want to attend if you're accepted. So one thing I'll say is that a lot of people, when you look on the internet, they'll tell you if you haven't gotten an interview by November, you're over. It's done. Which I want to say is not true. This cycle, I got 3 interviews in September, back to back to back. And I thought, okay, wow, I'm gonna get so many interviews. It's not like that. It doesn't work out like that. So I got 3 in November or 3 in September. I ended up getting one in November, and then my last most recent interview was I got it January like 5th. So there's no linear path. If by coincidence I didn't apply to those four first schools that I got interviews from and I only applied to the last school, that would have been my only one, and it would have been in January. So also my first year, I didn't get any interviews in November. And then I was like, okay, maybe there's still a chance. And then even further, I didn't get any interviews. So it can really go, it can go any way, but it's important. Never count yourself out. Always be prepared and just keep yourself ready for anything to happen. So it's a process. Okay. So the three big things that changed in my application between 2024 and 2025 was my school list, my projected activities, and my writing. So for my school list, honestly, this process is the odds are stacked against you within any particular school. You look up any medical school, and the odds of acceptance are like 3%, 4%. Thousands of people are applying to these schools, and only a couple hundred are getting accepted. So it's important to apply very broadly. You want to look at what the school's minimum requirements are, and if you hit them, it's probably good to apply. Even if you have a high MCAT, if you think you have a 524, I know a person who has 525 and they didn't get the amount of interviews that they were expecting. So it's kind of like vice versa. If your MCAT's low, you still have a chance. It gets a little bit more difficult. But if your MCAT's high, it's important to still apply broadly because you never know the way things are going to turn around. So another thing I want to clarify, and this is more my application since I applied in my junior year, I had a lot of projected activities. I had an internship that I was doing over the summer, but because I hadn't completed it, I marked it as projected on the application. And for anyone that might also be doing that, I just want to clarify that I don't think they weigh it very heavily. This was one of the biggest changes was that internship having been completed between my first and second application.
What
So
was the internship, Daniel?
the internship I did at Ventura County Medical Center, and I was just spending my entire summer shadowing various specialties. I did 360-ish hours of shadowing, probably across like 30, 40 different specialties. Like I was shadowing a new doctor every day. It was an amazing experience. I actually found that internship through Dave's listserv. So if you pay attention to that, there's golden nuggets that he's dropping in there. So it's
Thanks for the plug.
yeah, I know, of course. So just keep in mind that projected activities don't get weighed very heavily. And then the third biggest change was writing. And so I kind of included some samples of my writing. This is very long, I know, but it's something that I don't feel like it's not a resource that you get to see very much online. So I wanted to include it in this presentation. So I'm going to read it out loud. If somebody will volunteer to popcorn with me, that would be fantastic because I can only talk so much. But I'll start with the first one. So this is from the 2024 cycle. It's answering the question of why us. And I blurred the medical school because I'm still in the cycle. I don't want to ruffle any feathers or anything. So time and time again, the blank School of Medicine has demonstrated its commitment to prioritizing student development. Whether it's through affiliation with blank, providing students with access to diverse patient population, or its innovative blank curriculum that integrates clinical experiences early in students' careers. The blank actively positions its students for success, equipping them with necessary skills to provide diverse patient populations world-renowned treatment. Being there for my fellow students has always been important to me, pushing not only for my own success, but for my peers as well. At UC Santa Barbara, I volunteered as a learning assistant in lower and upper division biology classes, teaching others about topics I love. At the blank, peer teaching programs such as medical students as teachers and near peer academic support provide me with the platform needed to foster a collaborative student environment and facilitate the growth of those around me as we grow together. All right. Do I have a volunteer that will read?
I'm happy to jump in,
All right.
Daniel.
Thank you.
The Blank School of Medicine's dedication to integrating itself within the local community and location in the culturally diverse city of Blank create the perfect environment to continue doing my part for my community. While shadowing physicians at a wound clinic in a socioeconomically disadvantaged community, I witnessed firsthand the catastrophic effect of healthcare disparities. Seeing the pain and suffering experienced by patients solidified my commitment to never turn my back on these communities. I've had the opportunity to play a part of the backpack medicine program at VCMC, caring for underserved homeless populations in Ventura County. And as I look to the future, addressing the needs of local communities remains a top priority of mine. I believe blank outreach programs such as blank provide me the perfect opportunity to continue making a difference in my community. Additionally, the city of Blank provides the unique ability to connect with a large immigrant population, which, as someone coming from an immigrant family, I find to be highly valuable. I find to be a highly valuable and rewarding opportunity.
I'll finish it off. My research experience as part of the Maw Lab at UC Santa Barbara introduced me to cutting-edge biological research and inspires me to continue exploring topics I am passionate about, such as colorectal disease. Through its association with the Blank and the Blank Center, the Blank offers a wide variety of research opportunities. Under great minds like Blank, I can continue to grow as a person and a critical thinking scientist. I believe that my mission aligns directly with that of Blank, our shared value of caring for those most in need, combined with the opportunities to engage in the local community while also exploring research opportunities I feel passionate about, provide me with the perfect place to grow into the physician I aspire to be. Okay. So I obviously blanked out. That's just school specific information. The main problem that I have looking back on this is that I talked about very surface level things about this particular school. And I didn't really dive deep into anything. I didn't give any extra context about myself. I talked a little bit about what I did and basically said, if I get accepted into your school, I can continue doing what I'm doing. It's just listing things that aren't particularly special about any medical school. All the stuff that you find here can probably be found at other medical schools. So it just doesn't really get into it that much. There's nothing here that's really memorable or tells more about me that the school will look at and be like, "Oh, this is why we need this student." Honestly, just frankly, it's just not special. And so like we're mostly all STEM majors. Like this is, I think, the intuitive way to write why you would want to go to the school. And it just doesn't work very well. So I'm going to show you guys what I changed in the next cycle. We're going to be answering the same exact question. So I'll show you guys this. If it'll let me switch slides. There we go. Okay. So this is from the 2025 cycle, 2025 cycle. I want to clarify this is a school that I did get an interview from. And so like I'm not just showing you something different and saying, hey, look, this sounds nicer. Like this, I think has played a big part in why I got the interview. And so, okay, I'll read. So, Blank School of Medicine offers many great reasons to attend. A diverse student culture, a rich history of a rich history of research excellence, and an unmatched dedication to the local community. Yet, there is one reason to join your school that stands above the rest. My desire to attend Blank is fueled by the humanistic approach to medicine that is deeply rooted within its curriculum. Umbilical cord asphyxia has left my uncle completely dependent on others since birth. As he battles seizures, intellectual disabilities, and blindness, For most of Jack's life, my grandparents were there to look after him. However, after my grandpa's passing, his care became increasingly difficult for my grandma to manage. When my grandma rushed to the Middle East to care for her sister, who had fallen seriously ill, she left me as primary caregiver for my uncle. I was scared. I had never taken on such an immense responsibility before. My family needed me, and I stepped up. Initially, I was overwhelmed, but I soon discovered a side of Jack that I had never fully appreciated. We bonded as I integrated myself into his daily life, learning how to cook his favorite foods, manage his medications, and help bathe him. Growing up, I had seen how his disabilities had left him isolated from the rest of the family. It was hard for him to develop a deeper connection through the surface level conversations that he shared with others, who only saw him as his condition. Being there with him, I discovered just how perceptive he was, asking insightful questions about my feelings about college, if I was scared to go, and even inquiring about other family members. Through my connection with Jack, I saw as he became more eager and energetic for each new day. My journey with Jack underscores the significance of fostering a relationship between patients and physicians. I discovered the intimate and vulnerable nature of being a caregiver, which inspires an unparalleled level of care. This opportunity to help my family and see firsthand the way I was able to positively impact Jack's physical and mental health has been a rewarding experience, further motivating me to pursue a career in medicine. His story serves as a constant reminder of the profound impact a healthcare provider can have by treating each patient not just as a case, but as a whole person deserving of compassion and dignity. As I pursue a career in medicine, it remains of utmost importance to train at an institution that values holistic care and positions its students to address the needs of a diverse community. I believe blank is that institution. Leveraging these are just school specific programs that they have that highlight the humanistic approach within medicine. I will develop skills essential to becoming the physician I aspire to be, a physician who stands as a pillar of support within the community, treating each patient with empathy and respect. Okay, so you can kind of see, I don't know if you guys pick up on that, if that sounded more inspiring and meaningful to you, maybe more memorable, but I really focused on one particular thing about the school. And this school in particular has a curriculum that's different from most schools that does include a more humanistic approach. They have specialized classes for empathy and compassion within medicine. And so I really just focused on that one thing. And I showed a story that tells a lot more about myself and about how I aspire to be a physician and what is important to me. And I just showed how the school's mission and mine are aligned. Like very different than this, where I was just listing and trying to show, hey, I could do that with you guys too. Is there any questions on that? Anyone? If not, I'll continue. Okay.
I just wonder,
Yeah,
just to clarify, Daniel, that
Hmm.
these are, I think everybody understand this, but these are responses to secondaries
Yeah,
that
this is a
this
secondary
is not a
response.
primary. Yep.
So
Gotcha.
secondary response, primary response, all they really ask you is your personal statement, your activities, and then if you have like a self-identify as a challenged uh growing up. This is this school specifically asked why us. I applied to 33 schools this cycle. I think maybe five of them, maybe six of them had a why us statement. So everybody has different questions. They don't all include why us. But I just picked this one because I feel like intuitively, like I said, as STEM people, you guys will lean towards this listing and talking about all the great things about a school, even if it's not very specific. And then this is just really latching on to one thing and giving a lot more context about yourself and maybe a nice story, and then showing why that story relates and how it's changed you as a person towards medicine. Was there another question?
No, I just wanted to make sure we understood that,
Okay.
contextualized what was
All
going
right.
on here. But this is very helpful
I
because I
mean,
think a lot of times, you know, writing nobody ever sees, as you point out. This is the
Yeah,
reason why
exactly.
you're doing this exercise is like, I don't know what works,
Yeah.
and that's, I think you're making a pretty compelling case as to, that's that you didn't copy pasta your 24 app with
Yeah,
your and then your
I
25.
totally for any reapplicants. Activities, I changed them a smidgen to include more stories, make it more memorable, but same kind of content. Secondaries, I completely changed my approach.
Mhm.
Everything I started answering kind of like this, where I include some personal anecdote about me, and I talked about my experiences and more about myself. And to give them, because this is why they're asking you questions. They're sometimes they ask you really silly questions. I'll say that they ask silly questions, and you think, how am I even going to relate that to me? How am I going to talk about me? Sometimes there was like one or two where there was no way to talk about me. But most of them you should be able to tie in a story about yourself, an experience that you've lived, maybe one of your activities, and relate it to like just come up like just have like a good story with if you haven't done anything, it makes it a little bit tougher. But if you have a nice list, that's why it's good to drop all your activities, put it on maybe like a flow chart or something and just bullet point under it stories that you remember, and it'll help you answer these kinds of questions where you have to come up with the story that relates to a particular idea. I think there was someone else talking.
Uh, yeah. So if multiple prompts are similar from different schools,
Mhm.
is there any like drawback to talking about like a very similar activities that you've done?
Yeah, so when I was writing, I tried to, if it's like within one school, I would try to talk about different stories for each response. If it's something that's so impactful for you, you can include it for multiple response. And then across schools, you can reuse stuff. So there's no shame in and if some other school asked why us and they had something similar, like you could change it. Um, like they're not there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Just make sure that you remove
The name of the school.
if this is school XYZ and you name school ABC in your prompt, they're knowing that you're just kind of cranking and
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
not to just make sure
And
you're double checking if you're
yeah,
doing
that would
that.
be
But you're
awkward.
right. But you're right.
Yeah.
There's no ad count. They don't have the time to say, "Hey, did you get a secondary from Daniel? And if so, what
Yeah.
did it say?" They're
Yeah.
not doing that.
Yeah. Okay. So the fourth biggest change between my 2025 cycle and 2024 cycle was that I did not have a full-time job while I was writing my secondaries. As you can see from this illustration, the primary application is nowhere near the challenge that the secondary is. The challenge, I probably have like 80 pages on Google Docs of answering prompts. It's not an exaggeration. I probably have at least 80 pages and it's tiring. So when I applied the first time, I was doing my internship, which was 8 hours a day. I was driving back to Santa Barbara on the weekends to do research, which was 10 hours a day. So I would be doing my writing from like 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night, and then trying to go to bed early so that I could wake up and go do my next whatever. And so when you're trying to cram, at least for me personally, as someone who's not a writer, when you're trying to cram all this writing and you say, okay, I have 3 hours, I need to sit and write and I can't do anything else. It doesn't work for me. It really kills my creative process. And so when I did it the second time around, I didn't have a full-time job. If I wanted to write, I could write. And then if I said, okay, that's enough writing for me today, I don't think I'm going to be more productive if I keep writing, I can save it for the next day. And I don't have that pressure of, oh, I don't have time tomorrow. Like having no full-time job, I know it's a privileged thing to have, and you can still work full part-time and whatever, but I think a full-time job on top of secondaries, like people really underestimate how difficult the secondaries are. And that happened again with my friends who applied this cycle with me. I tried to say, because I had that experience from the last cycle, that, hey, secondaries take a lot more time than whatever you think it's going to take. And they didn't believe me. And then after they said, yeah, okay, you were right. But it takes a lot of time. So just try to, because if you every day, oh, I have 2 hours to write, you're gonna be writing and be like, I don't want to write anymore. But you have like that's it. That's all you have. So being able to take a break and come back to it is was such a big thing for me. Okay. So extra advice. Just try to incorporate personal stories and experiences in every response. Try to talk about the things you've learned from them specifically and how it relates to medicine, how it's made you a better person. Lay out your experiences and just make like a map, like how things connect, how it all comes back to why you want to pursue medicine and what you're learning from each of your activities. Do your research about the different schools. You want to know what programs they have, what problems are being faced in particular areas. If you're applying to a school in Buffalo, you might see that they had a resident strike. So if they have a question, what's a problem in medicine? You talk about how they're having residents striking and doctors are not happy, the residents with their hours and stuff like that. Like just be, the more specific you are to a particular school, the more they're going to feel that you actually care about them, and thus the more they're going to care about you. So you can do this. The same thing applies to interviewers. The school that I had, that I did end up getting a scholarship at, I found everything about the interviewer that I could online. And our conversation revolved around that kind of stuff. It was stuff that I was also interested. So I was fortunate that we shared the same interests, but I looked, she was doing interviews with news networks. She was publishing articles, and I went and I listened to her interviews, I read her articles, and then I asked her questions about that kind of stuff in the interviews. So like the more you do, the more effort you put in, the more you're going to get out. And then last thing is the application process is totally a numbers game. If you are totally dead set on, hey, I want to go to Harvard or I want to go to Wake Forest or I don't know, some other school, it might not work out the way you expect. When I applied in 2024, I didn't really even know Hackensack was a school. And now there's a good chance that that is where I'm going. And like you have to apply broadly. You have to be open. I would say apply to a lot of schools. Don't apply to any school you won't attend because if you get accepted and you decline, um, it looks bad on a reapplication. If you got accepted and then you turned it down, other schools will take that as a red flag when you apply again. Um, but yeah, apply broadly, be open-minded, apply to anywhere that you could see yourself actually attending. All right. So I have one last motivational story. I was trying to think about something that might motivate other people, and I was thinking back to when Dave would always say every time he saw me, I was calm looking, I was resilient and whatever, even though I failed, like I didn't get anywhere in my first application cycle. And I never really thought much about it. But now when I was trying to reflect and see what motivational information I could give you guys, I kind of realized why that is. Why I was always so calm even when things weren't working out. And it's because at the end of the day, I see myself as becoming a doctor. I know that no matter what happens, it might take 1 year, it might take 2 cycles, it might take 5 years. I know that I'm going to be a doctor. And so I kind of see everything, every bump in the road that comes up as just that, a bump in the road. It's just going to take me a little bit more time. It might be a little bit more effort, but at the end of the day, I'm going to be a doctor. So one example that that I have of this kind of thought process was I think 2023 winter quarter. I was biking to work. I was going to work. I work right next to Cottage Hospital in Goleta, and I live in San Joaquin. So I was gonna take the bus because it's winter quarter. It gets kind of cold when you're biking. Your hands kind of freeze up. So I was walking to the bus, and I saw somebody whose car got stuck in the middle of the road. So I helped push their car out of the road, and as we finished that, I noticed that I missed my bus. So I ran back to my apartment, I hopped on my bike, and I started biking to work. While biking, I had my hands in my pocket because I was freezing and I fell off my bike and I cut my leg up. Not too bad, but I cut it decently. And so obviously I was very upset. I was like, I just helped somebody and now I'm here falling off my bike, cutting myself, whatever. But rather than being upset and taking that to work, I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to challenge myself to go in with a positive mood. Because when I am a doctor, I know that I want to be one that even if he's having a bad day, they're not rubbing that off on other people. They're going in, they're seeing their patients, they're happy, and they're doing everything they can to make sure everybody else has a good experience. So I go to work and I had a great day, saw a lot of patients, and everything went well. And so just like thinking about how I could challenge myself in that moment, it turned from falling off my bike to, oh, let's see if I could do better today. Let's see if I can turn this negative into a positive. And for those of you who don't believe me, this is a picture. It's not that bad. It's just I fell off my bike and I tore my scrubs. That was the worst part. I tore my nice figs. But like that's kind of just like just think about things. It's all on your perspective. So if you are thinking, hey, one day I'm going to be a doctor, it doesn't matter if it's one cycle, it's two cycles. You can see like I wasn't truly that upset when I didn't get accepted in my first cycle. Honestly, my biggest thing was, oh my gosh, I have to write more secondaries. That was the worst part. But you gotta see it as an opportunity to improve yourself and do better. And I think with that kind of perspective, you'll never feel defeated. You'll never feel tired. You'll never feel like you can't do something. So that's all I have to say. So if anyone has questions, I feel free.
Well, can you unshare your screen, Daniel,
Yeah.
so we can see you because you're in miniature on my screen right now.
Yeah.
But um, this was so my cheeks are sore, not only because I'm just so stoked and happy for you, but even you telling that story. Although I confess, I was really hoping that there would be like some similar, bike loop crash, missed connection kind of thing that happens here. But I love your point about mindset, right? And it's a conscious decision that you make, and that setbacks happen for a reason. Jessica and I are meeting on the daily with kids who are they think their application cycle is in something of a death spiral, and as you point out earlier, there's still movement. I know a student who last Monday, I think it was the 12th of maybe 10th of March, got her first interview at a UC this entire application cycle. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's still movement out there, but I love the point about the mindset piece. And, also, I mean, the interview that you had at Hackensack, and I don't know, this is, I guess, a question I have for you is to what extent it sounds like you knew who you were going to be meeting
Yeah.
with, but that's not always
Yeah.
the
That is
case,
true.
right?
It's not always going to be like that. Um, I'd say two of my interviews, I did know who it was going to be. And then the other three I did not know. And more so the other three that I did not know, two of those were MMI. So I had multiple interviewers. And then the one, they just didn't say who it was going to be. And that was honestly probably my most scary interview because I couldn't get a little bit of a sneak peek into who the person was. So I didn't know what perspective or what topics I would want to talk about ahead of time. But like everything works out. So
But to your point about doing that cyber sleuthing, if you are given that inside intel,
yeah,
do not sleep on that. That is a huge scouting report opportunity
yeah,
that you've got. And it sounds like you did a deep dive on
yeah,
this doc.
yeah,
And I mean, let me tell you,
yeah,
docs are no different, if not, they may be
yeah.
even greater examples of people who would
And
love
I'll
to
be
talk about
honest,
themselves.
even the one that I didn't get to research, uh as soon as he turned his camera on, I was looking around his apartment, I was looking around his house. I saw like football trophies and like college memorabilia, and I was like, okay, we got an orthopedic surgeon, and like I need to think in that terms. Like I was kind of like trying to see what I could grab. Not that all football players are orthopedic surgeons. I would say it was a good hunch. And I looked it up after and he was an orthopedic surgeon. So
Yeah,
just doing what you can, trying to think of the little details.
yeah, that's great. Questions from the students on the call?
Yeah, I had a question. Did you take Casper or preview? And then if so, when did you take that? Was it like right before you applied, or how did that work for you?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the first time I did it, I didn't know because again, I'm a first generation applying to medical school. I didn't know what Casper or Preview was. You can call me unprepared, whatever. Yeah. Uh, I took I took the Preview exam and Casper exam like in June or July. Like I was pretty late. And Casper, I can't give you that much advice on because I did terribly. Preview, there's a YouTube video. I can send it to Dave. There's a video that's perfect. And I watched that video. I did like five practice problems, and then I scored in like the 98th percentile on the Casper exam. So, or the preview, sorry. But I took those in either, it was either June, I think it was June. But I would suggest doing it a little bit earlier so you don't have to stress about it. Because the timing that they offered, I remember it not being very flexible.
And is that a testing center, Daniel? What
No,
for
it was,
students who
those
don't
were
know?
both on the computer.
Yeah, so you don't have to go anywhere. It's not the MCAT where you're driving,
Yeah.
an hour away. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Thank you.
that's a great question. Yeah, and so thank you for asking that. Yeah.
I
Talk
do
to
have a
me. Oh
question.
yeah,
Oh,
go ahead, Jessica, please.
sorry.
Yeah.
I did have a question, Daniel, about your schools list the second time around.
Mhm.
What went into your decision making during the reapplication cycle for
Yeah.
your schools
So
list?
that's a good question. I am one for asking for help. So last year when I didn't get in anywhere, I went on Reddit and I talked to some people who were a little bit more successful than me. And I ran into somebody who now goes to Kaiser in Pasadena, and he was very nice. He actually sent me his entire school list, and he was from California, so it kind of fit that in-state, out-of-state. There's a little bit more that goes into it. Like some schools off the top of my head, Rush in Michigan, I think, is very service oriented. So there's like factors. I think that's the main factors is some schools are research oriented, some schools are service oriented, and then some only like people from their state. So we kind of aligned on that, and I just copied his list. He gave it to me, and I ran with it, and I was very thankful. But I can send that to Dave, and whoever else is applying and they're from California, they can see that.
I've
But
got
I,
your schools list, so, but yeah.
yeah, if you're thinking of what schools to apply, think of if they like in-state or out-of-state students, how they view research, how they view service like volunteering. Some schools really want hundreds and hundreds of hours of non-clinical volunteering, and then what their minimum scores are. If you don't have the minimum score, don't send them your money. Not worth it.
That's great, Daniel. And I actually do have a resource here if anyone needs more info for those schools that are more catering to their residents.
Mhm.
I just included a spreadsheet in there, so you're welcome to bookmark that. But thanks for sharing. I feel
Yeah.
like I get that question a lot,
Yeah.
a lot just in general. So that's really, really good info. Great, thanks.
Talk to me about you hear often how important it is to turn secondaries around, and you mentioned the unseen portion of the iceberg being the secondaries.
Yeah.
What was your, you had a little bit of, space calendar time wise. This most recent cycle, a successful one for you, but what was your kind of expectations for yourself as far as to how quickly you were turning those around?
Yeah. So for the big schools that I was applying to, like UC San Diego, and like I think all the UCs, whatever school was like deemed as more competitive online, I was definitely trying to get on top of those ones. Um, but secondaries are so difficult. I know for a fact I didn't submit all of them within 2 weeks. UC San Diego, I'm pretty sure I submitted within like 5 days because it was one of the ones that I wrote ahead of time, which is another thing that I would recommend if someone has the time is look at those prompts ahead. Usually they don't change very much year to year. Sometimes they do change completely. I think University of Miami, their application changed completely from this year to last year. which was frustrating because I wrote all of it and then they changed it. So
Yeah,
sometimes they change,
you
but
may get rugged if you pre-write.
yeah,
That's one of the catches.
you might get switched up on, but if you can, write it ahead of time. But I don't think it's the end of the world if you submit it a month later. Or just if you still have it, you have the money to submit that application, I would submit it.
Any, did you ever give any consideration? You mentioned that kind of, and I remember you very distinctly in that spring of your junior year. You had a lot of things going on. Did you ever give any consideration? Because you probably have the candle power to score much better
Yeah.
on your MCAT. And I think that you had kind of sub-optimized, and we talked about that in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Had you ever given any consideration to like, yeah, I got to redo this, or were you done? Turn the page. I think I've got a fighting chance with the score as is.
Yeah. So for context, I'll be open. I got a 512 on the MCAT. I was practicing practice tests, I would get like 517 to 518. And just when I took the exam, it didn't go exactly how I would have wanted. And I got a 512, which is the average score for an accepted applicant. And I'll be honest, there was really no point where I thought I needed to retake the exam. And that kind of stems from what you see online and what you see like my score was still average for a lot of schools, but also a lot of schools were accepting lower than 512. So I think that my activities and the other parts of my application, my amazing personality, I think it helps like I see those people that get accepted with lower than 512 or lower than average or whatever. And I don't see any reason why I shouldn't be accepted at a competitive program. Like not I'm not cocky, I'm not whatever. I just if other people can do it, I think I can do it too. So I never really thought, oh, let me go reapply or retake it.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, can I meet with those kinds of students all the time? And I'm delighted that your decision, which it sounds to me like was a pretty clear one for you, but there's a lot of kids
Yeah.
that is a
And
very painful
yeah,
decision,
and
and it can be
it's
rewarded.
expensive to
Yep,
take the test.
yep,
I like trying to pay for all my stuff, keep the rent and stuff going. I did not want to have to siphon money out of that to take the exam again.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, you were rewarded. That was a gamble that paid off. Good for you, and
Yeah.
I'm really really excited. We're almost out of time. Any other student questions that we want to maybe ask while Daniel is uh, Daniel is here? What I actually I'll maybe extend that offer a little bit longer and give them some time to think about it. What is the now that we're in the kind of late stages of this cycle though, and the
Mhm.
traffic rules are really kicking in right now for
Yep.
AMCAS. If you're not familiar with that term, just look up AMCAS traffic rules, and schools have an obligation to let AMCAS know where they are in their decisions. What are you feeling right now? Just without, I know you didn't want to get into specifics, but how are
Yeah.
you in your decision making process?
Yeah. So I'm actually still waiting to hear back from two schools. And you want to, we can end the recording and then I'll just talk.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
We'll wrap it. We'll
Yeah.
wrap it at that point. We'll end the recording, but we'll